We are grateful, O God, for this sacred day that brings us together to meditate on the ancient words that reorient our lives toward your love, your grace, and your truth. May the words of my mouth and the reflections of our hearts be pleasing to you, O God, our refuge and strength. Amen. It is no small challenge for a preacher to stand at the pulpit on the second Sunday of May. When I was a newly ordained minister eager to lead my own congregation, the late Reverend John Cairns, who worked closely with me at the Fourth Presbyterian Church in Chicago, gave me a simple and very direct word of advice about Mother's Day. It is one of the most controversial non-liturgical celebrations in the church. Pastors critique it, ignore it, or fully embrace it at their own peril. The problem with Mother's Day is that everyone has an opinion about it. Many embrace and celebrate it without a second thought. Some say the holiday turns motherhood into the litmus test of a woman's worth to our society. Some reject this day as a fairy tale that perpetuates the ideal of a perfect, loving mother in a nation that does nothing to support real mothers. For others, the second Sunday in May is out of step with the changing shape of families in the 21st century. And for pastors, that is that nagging question of whether Mother's Day belongs in the pulpit or should be left in the good hands of florists, local restaurateurs, and the greeting card industry. Every year, author Anne Lamott publishes a post on her Facebook page expressing her own dislike of this Sunday in May. She never fails to mention that she did not raise her son to celebrate Mother's Day because she believes the holiday promotes the harmful idea that mothers are inherently more loving, fulfilled, and complete than non-mothers. Lamott bristles at what she calls the whispered lie people in our society spread about parents being the only human experts in unconditional and selfless love. What a crock, Lamott wrote. We talk about loving one's child as if a child were a mystical prancing unicorn. Then she said, in my experience, it's parents who are prone to exhibit terrible self-satisfaction and selfishness who can raise children as props or adjuncts, like rooms added on in a remodel. Often their children's value and achievements in the world are reflected glory, necessary for these parents' self-esteem and sometimes for the family's survival. This is how children's souls are destroyed. With her typical no-nonsense candor, Lamott names the holiday's alienating nature for no mothers, mothers of deceased or estranged children, for children whose mothers were not able to be a nurturing presence in their lives, and for children whose mothers are gone. She imagines all these people sitting uncomfortably in their churches on Mother's Day, pretending to feel good about a holiday that excludes and hurts them while holding in their hearts the deepest feelings of grief and failure. But her main gripe with Mother's Day, Lamott confesses, is that it feels incomplete and imprecise. The main thing that ever helped mothers was other people mothering them, including aunties and brothers, a chain of mothering that keeps the whole shebang afloat. I am the woman I grew up to be, and Lamott wrote, partly in spite of my mother, who unconsciously raised me to self-destruct, and partly because of the extraordinary love of her best friends, my own best friends' mothers, and from surrogates, many of whom were not women at all, but gay men. I have loved them my entire life, including my mom, even after their passing. I still remember fondly the wise words a woman shared with me in the middle of a surprisingly passionate worship committee debate over whether we should even bring up Mother's Day in the service. This woman leaned over toward me and said, "Reverend, the problem with Mother's Day is that everyone had or has a mother." And here is the kernel of the truth and the seed of wisdom in the words of that wise woman. Every single one of us came into the world through the body of a mother. We all began our journey as human beings because a woman, a person, regardless of whether they were prepared for it or not, surrendered their body to pregnancy. We are all in the world because a mother, despite all her imperfections and mistakes, gave us her body and blood until we could have a chance to breathe and exist on our own. The first sounds any of us ever heard were our mother's blood flow, heartbeat, breathing, and voice. Research shows that a mother's voice shapes our brains and gives us an identity not too different from our unique fingerprints, enabling our emotional and intellectual development and social communication in childhood and throughout our lives. My own mother's voice continues to guide me to this day. My understanding of the world, relationships, ethics, moral values, religion, and life began to take shape as I listened to my mother. She helped me understand the importance of conflict resolution and the consequences of not showing love for another human being. Apologize to your brother or you won't eat dessert today. My mother made me aware of global inequality. There are hungry children in Africa and you won't eat your salad. She taught me about expectations. I raised you better than that. Even though we were not a religious family, my mother's voice put deep in my soul an appreciation for prayer. You'd better pray this thing will come off the sofa. She instilled in me a genuine concern for the common good. Don't forget to put the toilet seat down after you pee, and make sure you aim right into the bowl. My mother also taught me that sometimes arguing is pointless. Clean up your room because I'm telling you to do it. I am thankful that she emphasized the benefits of being a thoughtful and strategic planner. Always wear clean underwear when you go out in case there is some kind of accident. And I am always grateful for those moments of vulnerability and beauty when my mother says, "I don't have all the answers. I'm only your mother, but no one else in the world loves you like I do. So listen to me not just with your ears, but with your heart, because all I want is for you to live well." This is why this preacher is not ready to give up on Mother's Day just yet. And it is not just because I love my less than perfect mother with every fiber of my being. No, I truly believe that Mother's Day, even though the wider culture has over-sentimentalized and over-commercialized it, creates a sacred space in the worship service where we can listen with our hearts and reflect more intentionally on issues that are important to women and mothers in our families, in our congregations, in our nation, and in the world. I have to admit, I was a bit surprised when I started poking around the internet last Friday to find out what mothers hoped they would get for Mother's Day this year. Almost every mommy blogger said that the items near the top of their Mother's Day wish list weren't flowers or chocolate or brunch at a nice restaurant, but quality time with their families, something taken off their plates, and peace and quiet for a change. On Mother's Day, we engage in this collective glorification of motherhood without saying much at all about the heavy lifting job it takes to be a mother. Our society and culture hold mothers to unrealistic expectations. Even in affluent communities like Winnetka, mothers still handle a disproportionate amount of household labor and shoulder most of the parenting responsibilities without much help from policymakers and oftentimes from their spouses and partners. Lately, pro-natalist politicians have expressed concerns about the steep decline in the country's birth rates, especially among white families. And the administration has even floated the idea of giving a baby bonus to every American mother after delivery. And yet, on Mother's Day, no one, not even churches that love to celebrate mothers, is paying attention to the physical, emotional, financial, and spiritual toll motherhood places on American moms from all walks of life and in every family configuration. Henry Nouwen, the late Dutch Roman Catholic priest and writer, said that listening is much more than allowing another to talk while you wait for a chance to respond. Listening is paying a full attention to others and welcoming them into our very beings. The beauty of listening is that those who are listened to start feeling accepted. Listening is a form of spiritual hospitality by which you invite strangers to become friends. American mothers need and deserve the hospitality of our collective listening. Mothers deserve the full attention of their families, faith communities, and policymakers so they can feel in real and palpable ways that our society does value the sacred work of raising a child. As people of faith who worship the God who loves us like a mother and follow the Christ that gives birth to the church, we need to be concerned about whether mothers in our congregation, in our community, and in our country have generous paid family leave and access to affordable and high-quality child care. It is not enough to make a big deal of a holiday that celebrates motherhood and speak about our love for our mothers in mockingly sentimental tones. As faithful Christians, we need to ask ourselves if our society gives mothers the peace of mind they need to thrive both as human beings and as parents. We have to take a stand on the side of mothers who need and deserve fair work schedules, equal pay protection, reproductive rights, and opportunities to pursue their professional goals and reach for their dreams without feeling that they can't do it because they have to be a mother. In other words, to make mothers feel loved and accepted, we all need to work together to retool and update the societal system that is deaf to their voices and stacked against their happiness and well-being. We also have to keep in mind that mothering, as Anne Lamott said so eloquently, is not a solo human activity. Study after study reveals that mothers are happier and healthier when they are not doing all the mothering all by themselves. In fact, David Brooks wrote an excellent article in The Atlantic in which he noted that the invention of the nuclear family, the married couple and children in American culture, has been a mistake. Since the 1960s, Americans have moved away from interconnected and extended families to smaller, detached, and more self-sustaining nuclear families. The pressure to make this family arrangement work has been building up as couples devote more time preparing their children to succeed in a highly competitive world while working longer hours and managing challenging schedules at home and at work. An increasing number of mothers have sacrificed friendships and volunteering in their faith communities to keep up with the relentless demand of the nuclear family. Affluent families have replaced the loving and caring presence of aunts and uncles and cousins and grandparents and close friends with professional childcare the local school system, sports, expensive after-school programs, therapists, and even life coaches. But as parents have withdrawn from their extended families, friends, and communities of faith that offer an intergenerational network of care, attentiveness, wisdom, prayers, and love, life has become more stressful and less peaceful, especially for mothers. It is no surprise that so many mothers would like to have peace and quiet or things removed from their to-do list on Mother's Day. Mothering requires the effort, energy, time, patience, skills, faith, and loving presence of many other people besides mothers. Many of you may be wondering by now how on earth any of this talk about social policies and extended families and mothering has anything to do with the scripture lesson from John that Eddie Chung read this morning. Nice voice, by the way. Well, at the heart of today's passage, that is that heartwarming moment when Jesus says, "My sheep hear my voice. I know them, and they follow me." As I was reflecting on this verse last week, I began to imagine our time together in this sanctuary as a period of spiritual gestation. We gather here in the womb of the divine, and we listen for God's heartbeat. We pause to pay attention to God's breath, which is the spirit of life that moves among us and energizes us. We listen to the words of Christ, words that give shape to our faith, words that prime us to embrace the wholeness and goodness of life so we may live well, words that prepare us to love our neighbors as we love ourselves, words that guide us and compel us to welcome mothers into our very being by speaking clearly about the system that is failing them and imagining a different kind of society where mothers are more important and loved than the ideas about motherhood or the anxiety over falling birth rates. Friends, because we are here today to listen generously to the words of Christ and to let them give us an identity, I end this Mother's Day sermon with these words I hope will sink into your hearts and empower you to care more deeply about the mothers in your life, in our country, and in the world. To all the exhausted, overworked, underpaid, flawed, caring, and loving mothers in our congregation, and those who are joining us online for worship today, know that this church is listening and stands by you. To all the mothers who simply want a day of peace and quiet with one less chore on your plate today, know that we are listening to your need. May this day bring the quietude and rest for which you yearn. To all adoptive mothers, know that this church cares deeply about you. To all grandmothers and mothers-in-law, far and near, know that you too have our full attention and love. To all mothers who cannot be with their children today, know that this church is here for you. To all mothers who lost their children and children who lost their mothers, know that we are here to listen to the memories you treasure and keep your loved ones close by your heart. To all mothering men, fathers, uncles, cousins, brothers, and grandfathers in our lives, know that your loving presence is life-giving and life-saving. To the mothers of Israeli hostages held by Hamas, and to the mothers of starving children in Gaza, to all mothers in places of violence, know that the voice of Christ inspires this church to seek peace with justice, to hold space for your grief, and to act with compassion that transcends borders and politics. To all mothers who are worried about the rising cost of living, the gap in gender pay, the dismantling of public education, the defunding of child care programs, cuts to Medicaid, the alarming rise in maternal deaths, especially among Black women, and the overwhelming stress of being a mother today, know that our church hears your concerns, welcomes you, offers you the hospitality of our listening, and hopes to work with you to build the social safety net you need to flourish. And to all who can celebrate this day with open hearts, Happy Mother's Day.